has unmuted. Everyone should mute their audio, otherwise there will be a lot of disturbance. You cannot hear me properly. Okay, introduction. Coronavirus is an important human and animal pathogen. At the end of 2019, a novel coronavirus was identified as the cause of a cluster of pneumonia cases in Wuhan, a city in Hubei province of China. It rapidly spread, resulting in an epidemic throughout China, followed by an increase in number of cases in other countries throughout the world. In February 2020, WHO designated the disease COVID-19. COVID-19 means coronavirus disease 19, which stands for coronavirus disease 2019. The virus that caused COVID-19 is designated severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, that is SARS-CoV-2. Previously, it was referred to as 2019 novel coronavirus. Previously, it was called as SARS-CoV-2. Now it is called as COVID-19. Spectrum of illness of severity. The spectrum of symptomatic infection ranges from mild to critical. Most infections are not severe. Specifically, in a report from China, Chinese Center for Disease Central Control and Prevention, it comes as a mild, severe, and critical form of disease. Mild is where there are no symptoms, or mild pneumonia is reported in 81% of cases. Severe disease, for example, patients with dyspnea, hypoxia, or more than 50% lung involvement on imaging within 24 to 48 hours was reported in 14%. Some more people are joining. I'm admitting them. 1 second. Three more people are adding. I'm admitting them. 2 minutes. I'll continue the presentation. Please, everyone mute. Okay, in mild cases where reported in 81%, patients has no symptoms or mild pneumonia. Severe cases, for example, patients with developed dyspnea, hypoxia, and more than 50% of lung involvement, imaging seen within 24 to 48 hours. Still people are getting, now almost 17 people are there. Critical cases where the respiratory patient comes with respiratory failure, shock, or multi-organ dysfunction. This is reported in 5% of population, and overall case fatality rate is only 2.3%. That is no deaths were reported among non-critical cases. So if 100 people are getting infected, 81% goes asymptomatic. They may not develop any symptoms also, and around 14% will develop severe disease. Then another 5% will develop critical disease. Overall mortality rate is around 2.3 now. Risk factors for severe illness. Severe illness can occur in otherwise healthy individuals of any age, but it predominantly occurs in adults with advanced age and underlying medical conditions like comorbidities that have been associated with severe illness and mortality. That includes cardiovascular disease like ischemic heart disease, cardiomyopathy, all those things. Then diabetes mellitus, hypertension, chronic lung disease like asthma, COPD. Then cancer disorders where patients are in immunosuppressants. Then chronic kidney disease, patients who are already in renal failure. Obesity is just a BMI more than 30 itself is high risk for developing COVID infection. Clinical features, usually fever is the first symptom to appear. Up to 98% people with COVID infection will have fever as a first sign. Then is cough, up to 72 to 76 to 82% people present with cough. Then again dyspnea, that is signs of breathing difficulty, develops in 31 to 55% of cases. In healthcare environment, the following are specific ways to protect yourself. Early identification of individuals who may present with signs of COVID infection. Control the source of infection by having the individuals wear a surgical mask and perform hand hygiene and place the patient in private room with the doors closed. Wear appropriate personal protective equipments, that is respiratory protection with face shield, N95 mask, gown and gloves when entering the room of the patient with a suspected or confirmed COVID infection. Perform hand hygiene when removing PPE and routinely practice hand hygiene. Routine cleaning of equipment should follow patients use and used on other patients. Routine adherence to environmental cleaning and disinfection each day and whenever patient is discharged. Hospital preparedness, it is a time to set aside the usual business mindset, even if a large number of severe cases don't start appearing for weeks to come up. Every moment spent on pre-preparation now will pay off. To be prepared, stay informed about the local COVID-19 situation. That is, we have to always be aware surrounding which area in our city is contaminated, where is hot zones, which zone is contaminated, how many cases are appearing. So we should have every day we should have information on the situation around us. Develop a review facility emergency plan. Establish relationship with the key healthcare and public health partners in the community. Create emergency contact list. Communicate with the staff and patient. Core committee, that is a hospital infection control, multidisciplinary leaders to take policy decisions and coordinate the activities. Different strategy to adopt for a triage and patient flow. We should set up a flu clinic at the entrance. All patients should be screened with the thermal scanners. Patient interviews with a checklist. Full protection and PPE in emergency department and flu clinic, we have to adhere to that. COVID wards in isolated building. Any positive COVID patient should always admitted in a different building. We should not mix the COVID patients with regular patients. 1 second, somebody else is getting. Yeah. Patient cohort has to be done in case while doing the triage. Separate route and lift should be there for the positive patient, and there should be a proper protocol for the staff movement. I'll explain that. This is a simple triage for the patient flow. Triage and patient flow. Whenever patient comes in the casualty, we will in the emergency, that is the outside emergency room, outside ER, we have to triage at the patient, the flu clinic or emergency triage room. So there itself we have to give a questionnaire to the patient relative. If we are not suspecting the patient is having any symptoms of COVID, then we should consider the patient as non-COVID and admit and treat manage in non-COVID ward or non-COVID ICU. Whenever we are suspecting a COVID symptoms, then that patient has to go to the fever clinic and he has to go for the further testing. If in case patient comes positive, then patient has to be admitted in isolation ward or in isolation ICU, where at present we don't have in our setup. Maybe for the future, if in cases more number of cases starts appearing, we may prepare for admitting COVID case also. At present, we will be, if we are suspecting any case, we will be sending the patients to higher center, that is presently Victoria Hospital. Then fever clinic. How fever clinic should look like? It is an outpatient facility where a patient could come in when they have fever or fever accompanied with multiple other health related issues. Patient could evaluate and use evidence-based clinical protocol to diagnose the cause of the problem. Fever could be due to multiple reasons, and one of them could be possibly the viral infection like COVID-19. So we have to screen them. Every patient needs to be screened at the entry point of the clinic or hospital. Patients with fever should be directed to the fever clinic. Out of the patients who are evaluated in the fever clinic, the one that was suspected to have viral infection like coronavirus will have to undergo tests to confirm the diagnosis. Fever clinic consultation room typically looks like this. There should be they need to be set up in a place that is away from the main traffic of the hospital building. That it should not be in the same OPD block where we are seeing other OPD patients. Preferably with a separate entrance. If you do not have such area, then do not start fever clinic. This is to ensure that we are not mixing the patients' flow, address, and paranoia of regular other patients. One consult room with a separate entry and preferably separate exit should be there for fever clinic. Room should be segregated from the regular area. Separate area in the outpatient zone with a separate air condition for the ventilation. Waiting area to be segregated from the routine checkup area and fever clinic. Manpower and equipment in fever clinic, it should be one senior doctor, and there should be a nurse, and housekeeping staff should be there, and security should be there. Equipments required is portable X-ray machine. That's in case if we get any symptomatic patient, we cannot send the patient to regular X-ray room, so we need to have portable X-ray room. X-ray should be taken over there itself. Table and chair should be there. Basic monitor, thermometer, NIBP for a BP measurement. Stethoscope should be there. Stretcher with oxygen cylinder and pulse oximeter. These are the equipment required for the fever clinic. Responsibility of the front office executives. So front office executive to ensure that he or she is wearing a mask and gloves through the clinic operating hours. Whenever they are sitting in the reception, they have always should wear a mask and gloves. They should need to initiate billing post receipt of the payment only through the digital mode. So digital mode of payment is always preferred than the cash. Team to ensure that the patient documents are received via soft mode, printed and kept ready for collection by diagnostic team. So it's preferred always to ask for a digital copy of their documents. If they're having a previous documents, they can send to WhatsApp or through email. And all our diagnostic investigations also should be given through online mode. That is a preferable mode to prevent the cross infection. Responsibility of the doctor. Doctor will be trained by the general physician or internal medicine qualified doctor. The doctor to ensure that she is wearing protective gear as per the COVID-19 protocols while inside the consult room or isolation room. Doctor to be inside the consult isolation room throughout the session. That's minimum of 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Doctor to ensure hand sanitization protocol are followed both doctors and patients. Doctor to dispose the protective gear at the end of each examination session in fever clinic room. Hand sanitation protocol to be followed after discarding the gear. Responsibility of the nurse. Nurse to ensure to wear PPE kit inside the sterile room only. That is designated donning room will be there. There only they have to wear the PPE kit, not in other places. Sample packing to be done as per the defined protocols. Nurse to be inside the sample collection room throughout the session, minimum from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Hand sanitation protocols to be followed after discharge gear. Responsibility of housekeeping staff. Housekeeping staff has to ensure that they use the sterile room to wear the PPE kit and complete surface cleaning activity after each patient visits in consult room and isolation room. Housekeeping staff to enter sample collection room through staff entryway and dispose the biomedical waste along with their own kit. They need to follow biomedical waste disposable protocols. This is showing full protection and PP in the flu clinic and emergency. This is a flu clinic where a doctor is sitting here having full gear of PPE, and then a nursing staff is a patient is sitting some almost 2-3 meters distance from the doctor. Here we can see in the casualty bed is there. There is a ventilator. Casualty staff with all prepared medications kept aside, and she's also wearing a full protective gear. This is a flow of staff. Staff enter the floor in their streetwear and collect the scrub suit from the issue counter. Whenever staff comes to the hospital, they have to collect their OT dress or scrubs, and then they will go to move to the change room, and change room they change to the scrubs. Then they keep the streetwear in their valuable lockers. Then they go to the donning room of the wards and don appropriately. Don means wearing the PPE kit. So locker room is separate. Locker room you will be changing your street dress, then you'll be wearing scrubs in the locker room. From locker room, you will be going to donning room, where you will wear appropriate PPE. On completion of the shift, move to doffing room. So donning room is separate and doffing room is separate. Donning room is always sterile. Doffing room is unsterile. So you should never enter by mistake. Also, you should not cross these rooms. On completion of the shift, move to the doffing room of the respective ward and remove the hazmat suit or N95 mask and other PPE. Leave the donning room in the scrubs. Pick up the streetwear from the locker, take a shower, then you move out. This should be the movement of staff. Personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment are protective gear designed to safeguard the healthcare workers by minimizing the exposure to biological agents. This includes eye protection. Eye protection is either with a goggle or face shield. Goggles or face shield, and mask. Mask comes as a surgical mask, that is 3-ply mask, and N95 mask. There are other type of masks called FFP mask. FFP2 and FFP3 masks are there. That is also similar to N95 mask. N95 means it is a New York, that is American standard. FFP masks are European standard. Then you have to wear a latex glove. Then coverall gown. Gown should be water resistant. There is some standard 90 GSM for the this protective gown is mentioned by CDC. Also, PPE includes head cover and shoe cover. This is how donning and doffing you have to do that. I'll share a video later on. So there are levels of protection where what type of PPE we have to wear in each level. This is a classification given by CDC and ICMR, where there are 3 levels of protection. There level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 scope of application is in case of a pre-examination or a triage area. Triage area, you need to have level 1 protection. Level 1 means you should be having a disposable surgical cap, disposable surgical mask, regular working uniform is enough, disposable latex glove, and a disposable isolation clothing if necessary. So level 1 is where very minimal PPE is required. That is, you just need to have a surgical mask and a cap. This you typically in case in a triage area. Then is level 2. Here you need a little bit extra protection. So that is, you will be having a surgical cap and you will have a N95 mask, medical grade mask, then a working uniform, disposable medical protective uniform, then disposable latex gloves, and also goggles. So level 2 comes in fewer outpatient departments, isolation wards, including isolation intensive care, and non-respiratory specimen examination areas, and imaging examination of a suspected confound patient, cleaning of surgical instrument used with suspected confound patients. Level 2 is usually suspected and confound patients. We have to wear level 2 protection. Then is level 3 protection. Level 3 protection includes a complete gear, that is a surgical cap, N95 mask, work uniform, disposable medical protective uniform, disposable latex gloves, full face respiratory protection device, that is a powered air purifying respirator. Here usually level 3 we have to wear whenever there is any aerosol generating procedures such as tracheal intubation, tracheostomy, bronchoscopy, fibroscopy, endoscopy, all wherever aerosol generation is there we have to wear level 3 protection. So these are the images. Level 1 PP, where now here scrub nurse and a doctor, they are wearing only this is a regular surgical mask, cap, and latex glove with the scrubs. This is level 1 PPE. Level 2 with the previous one, extra is goggle should be there and N95 mask should be there. This is level 2. Level 3 is where aerosol generation. See, now a doctor is intubating, so they are in a level 3 protection. So they are completely covering their head with the complete head protection. They'll be having N95 mask, they'll be having goggles, and also one face covering shield or total head cover. This is level 3. So PPE in case of a screening OPD, healthcare workers, those are doctors and nurses, they have to wear N95 mask, goggles and gown and gloves. I'm stressing more on this PPE because it is very, very important for us to prevent getting infected from patients who walks in, because many times we don't know who is positive, who is negative. Ideally, we should consider universal precautions and follow these personal protective equipments and disinfection very strictly. We should always suspect a patient as a positive. That's why this is very, very PP is utmost important to prevent ourselves getting infected, especially now we are in healthcare, especially people who are in the emergency department. So screening OPD, should have an N95 mask, goggles, gown, gloves, shoe cover and hood. PP required for sample handling laboratory. Three more people are getting joined. Yeah, whenever some person is collecting the sample, usually laboratory people, they need to have an N95 mask, goggles, face shield, gown, water resistant. Then they should have gloves, that is a double glove should be there. COVID ICU, anyway, we are not having COVID ICU. I'll just run through. We should have N95 mask, goggles, face shield, gown, heavy duty gloves, boots and hood. This is for the cleaners, that is cleaners and sweepers. They should have a heavy duty glove, boots and hood in case of COVID ICU. For the doctors, they should have a regular shoe cover, hood and apron along with the N95 mask and goggles, gown and double glove. In case of a radiology wing, they just need to have triple layer mask. Nothing extra is required. For the administrative area, they are a homemade cloth mask is enough. There is no requirement for a N95 mask for administrative area. In case of regular OPDs, triple layer mask is required for the doctors and nurses. For cleaning person, the triple layer mask with heavy duty glove is required. Ambulance for transporting COVID patient. Whenever you are suspected a COVID patient or positive COVID patient, then doctors who are traveling with the patient should have a N95 mask, goggles, gown should be water resistant, then double glove should be there. Ambulance for transporting COVID patients, cleaners and sweepers, they should have triple layer mask and glove. Glove should be heavy duty. Ambulance for transporting a COVID patient, driver should have triple layer mask. Triple layer mask is enough for the driver, as they are not in close contact with the patients. These are the definition for the COVID-19 at present. I'll just go through one definition. A patient with acute respiratory illness, that is a fever and at least one sign and symptom. Kumar Swami is joining now. Fever and at least one sign of symptom of respiratory illness, for example, cough, shortness of breath, and any history of travel to a residence in location reporting community transmission of COVID-19 disease during the 14 days prior to the symptom, or a patient with any acute respiratory illness and have been in contact with the confirmed or a probable COVID-19 case in last 14 days prior to symptoms and onset. That is a suspected case. Probable case is a suspect case for whom testing for COVID-19 virus is inconclusive, or a suspect for whom testing could not be performed for any other reasons. A confirmed case is the one which is laboratory confirmation of COVID-19 infection irrespective of the clinical signs and symptoms. Definition of the contact. A contact is a person who experienced any one of the following exposure during 2 days before and 14 days after the onset of symptoms of probable or confirmed case. This is very important. Should concentrate who is a contact. Contact, whenever you come to face-to-face contact with a probable or confirmed case within 1 meter distance for more than 15 minutes. Whenever, for example, we are interacting with the patient, patient may be COVID positive or he is a suspected COVID, sitting close by, like less than 1 meter, and interaction more than 15 minutes indicates that there is a high risk of transmission of infection. So then they will be called as contacts. In direct physical contact with a probable or confirmed case, or that means directly we are touching the patient and examining the patient. direct care for a patient with a probable or confirmed COVID-19 disease without use of proper personal protective equipments or other situation as indicated by the local risk assessment. Now comes with management of contact in case of healthcare setting. This is like in case if some healthcare person, anybody, doctor, nurse, or housekeeping staff or security, if somebody comes in contact with the COVID suspect or a COVID positive patient, what precautions, what we have to do as a institute. Currently, these guidelines applies to healthcare. HCP means healthcare personnel. Healthcare person with potential exposure in healthcare setting to patients with confirmed COVID-19 cases. However, healthcare personal exposure could involve a patient under investigation also, who is waiting for the testing. Implementation of monitoring and work restriction described in the guidelines could be applied to healthcare personnel exposed to patient under investigation if the test result for patient under investigations are not expected to return within 42 to 72 hours. A record of healthcare personnel exposed to patient under infection should be maintained, and the healthcare person should be encouraged to perform self-monitoring while awaiting for the test results. If the result will be delayed for more than 72 hours or the patient is positive for COVID-19, then the monitoring and the work restriction described in this document should be followed. This is the CDC guidelines, epidemiological risk classification for asymptomatic healthcare personnel following exposure to the patient with COVID-19. In this chart, you can see I have written in brown color. Whenever a prolonged close contact with the COVID-19 patient who was wearing a face mask. So if patient is COVID positive and he is a face mask, and when we get exposed to such patients, and what is our risk level? This has been mentioned here. In the first column, you can see healthcare personnel PPE none. That means when a healthcare person is not wearing PPE at all, he has come in contact with the patient who was wearing the face mask. So risk category here is medium. Because the patient is wearing a face mask, so chances of transmission of disease is medium risk, not in the high risk category. So in such case, we have to exclude the healthcare personnel for working for 14 days from the date of exposure, and we have to tell them actively monitor their symptoms. Every day they have to monitor their symptoms regularly, and they should go for quarantine 14 days. In case healthcare personnel wearing the PPE but not wearing a surgical not wearing a surgical face mask or N95 mask, not wearing any mask but he is wearing goggles, wearing glove and all those things, but again they falls into the medium risk. They have to go for 14 days quarantine. Healthcare personnel wearing complete PPE but not wearing eye protection. They are wearing everything. They are wearing gloves, shoe covers. They are wearing gowns. They are wearing N95 mask, but they have missed wearing the goggles. Then they falls under low risk category. They don't need to skip from the work. They just need to self monitor their symptoms every day. Same thing in case if you are not wearing a gown, again they falls under low risk. And when we all are recommended PPE except wearing a surgical face mask instead of N95. Say for example, we are wearing a complete PPE, but instead of N95 mask, we are wearing a surgical mask. That is also low risk. So they don't need to go for isolation. They just need to monitor their symptoms regularly. This is one more scenario. Not able to see properly. I think this is one more scenario. In this scenario, a patient is not wearing the face mask. When patient is not wearing face mask, risk categorization will increase. So here what happens, you are wearing complete PPE. First thing is when we are not wearing PPE, you are goes into high risk. So immediately will be excluded from the work for 14 days and you will be quarantined and you will be examined every day. Again, not wearing a surgical mask or N95 mask, again it's a high risk. Same thing, 14 days quarantine is required. Next thing is not wearing eye protection, goes into medium risk. Again, you will be going into 14 days quarantine. Then low risk categories are those who not wearing gowns not wearing complete recommended all set of PPEs. This is for people who travels. Yeah. Strategy for COVID testing in India. At present, asymptomatic individuals who have undertaken international travel in the last 14 days are getting tested, and all symptomatic contacts of laboratory confirmed cases are being tested now. All symptomatic healthcare workers need to be tested. All patients with a severe acute respiratory illness, SARI, that is a fever and cough, shortness of breath, should be tested. Then asymptomatic direct and high risk contact of confirmed cases should be tested once between day 5 and day 14, coming his or her close contact. Then all symptomatic patient with influenza like illness, ILI means influenza like illness, that is a patient having fever, cough, sore throat, running nose, these patients should be tested within 70 days of illness, that is RT-PCR. If they are coming after 7 days of illness, we can do antibody testing. High risk primary contacts with age more than 50 years or any of the comorbidities, that is hypertension, diabetes, IST, CKD, asthma, COPD, CLD, immunosuppression drugs, HIV, even if asymptomatic, needs hospitalization and testing. High risk primary contacts with age less than 50 years with no comorbid conditions needs to be quarantined in facilities arranged by government like hotels and lodges. So age more than 50 comorbid patients needs to be compulsory tested, and the quarantine happens in the hospitals, whereas less than 50 years quarantine happens outside the hospitals. Then comes IPC, infection prevention and control, which is very, very important now. Infection IPC strategies to prevent and or limit transmission healthcare setting include the following: ensure adequate triage, early recognition and source control, that is isolating the patient with a suspected COVID disease, apply standard precaution for all the patients, implementing empiric additional precautions to prevent droplet and contact whenever possible, airborne precaution for suspected cases with COVID-19, implementing administrative control using environmental and engineering controls, ensuring triage, early recognition and source control. It is a clinical triage includes a system for assessing all patients at admission level, allow early recognition of the possible COVID disease, and immediately isolate the such patients whenever suspected COVID-19 disease in the area, separate from other patients. Facilitate the early identification of cases suspected COVID-19 disease in a healthcare facility. This should include encourage a healthcare worker to have high level of clinical suspicion. Whenever you're feeling patient with the cough, fever, cold, headache, myalgia, should always suspect patient must be having COVID infection. Establish a well-equipped triage station at the entrance of the healthcare facility, supported by the trained staff. Posting signs in public area, reminding symptoms patients to alert healthcare workers. To promote promotion of the hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene are essential to preventive measures. Applying a standard precaution for all the patients, that is standard precautions include hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene. The use of appropriate personal protective equipments according to the risk assessment, as I explained before. Injection safety practice, as there is a 1% chance of needle prick transmission through needle prick injury also can happen. A safety waste management system, proper linen handling, environmental cleaning, disinfection, sterilization of patient care equipments. Ensure that the following respiratory hygiene measures are used. Ensure all the patients cover their nose, mouth with their tissue or elbow whenever they cough or sneeze. Offer a medical mask to patient with a suspected COVID-19 disease while they are in the waiting area or public area or cohort room. Perform hand hygiene after contact with the respiratory secretions always. Healthcare workers should apply WHO's that is a 5 movement of for hand hygiene approach before touching a patient, before any clean or aspect procedure is performed, after exposure to body fluids, after touching a patient, and after touching the patient's surroundings. Always perform hand hygiene whenever you touch a patient, whenever you touch any fluids, whenever you touch his linen or something. Hand hygiene includes either cleaning the hands with the soap and water or with the alcohol based hand rub. Wash hands with the soap and water when they are visibly soiled. Alcohol-based hand rubs may be used only if hands are not visibly soiled. It is important to ensure that environmental cleaning and disinfection procedures are followed consistently and correctly. Thorough cleaning environmental surface with water and detergent and applying commonly used hospital level disinfections such as 1% sodium hypochlorite are effective and sufficient procedures. Medical devices and equipments, laundry, food service utensils, and medical waste should be managed in accordance with the safe routine procedures. Implementing empiric additional precautions, that is contact and droplet precaution. In addition to use standard precaution, all individuals, including family members, visitors, and healthcare workers, should use contact and droplet precautions before entering the room where suspected or confirmed COVID patients are admitted. Patients should be placed in a adequately ventilated single room. When single rooms are not available, patients suspected of being COVID-19 disease should be grouped together. All patient beds should be placed at least 1 meter distance in case of that is in semi-private area or general ward. Wherever possible, a team of healthcare workers should be designated to care exclusively for suspected or confirmed cases to reduce the risk of transmission. All efforts should be made to expose the minimum number of staffs in the area where suspected or confirmed patients of COVID-19 are located. Healthcare workers should use a standard medical mask or an N95 mask required only when supervisor is getting added now. Healthcare workers should wear eye protection goggles, facial protection face shield, avoid contamination of a mucous membrane. Healthcare workers should wear a clean, non-sterile, long-sleeved gowns. Healthcare workers should always also use gloves. Use of boots, coverall, and apron is not required during routine care. After patient care, appropriate doffing and disposal of all PPEs and hand hygiene should be carried out. Equipment should be either single-use or disposable or dedicated equipments. For example, stethoscope, blood pressure cuff, or thermometer. If equipments needs to be shared among the patients, clean and disinfect it between use of for each individual patients by using 70% alcohol. For example, if you are using a thermometer or if you are using a knee hammer, you are using a stethoscope or a BP apparatus, you should not use the same apparatus to the same other patient before cleaning it. Always you have to clean. Whenever a patient comes in to OPD, comes into the casualty, don't allow the second patient. Give some time the patient to go outside and call the housekeeping staff. And whichever area you suspect it's contaminated, that has to be cleaned. Then only it is to we have to use that area. Healthcare workers should refrain from touching a nose, eyes, nose, or mouth with potentially contaminated gloves or bare hands. Should never, if you start practicing these simple techniques to prevent touching your eyes and nose or mouth, this is a common mistakes we do every day. Avoid moving and transporting patients out of the room or area unless medically necessary. Use designated portable X-ray equipment and other designated diagnostic equipment. If transport is required, use a predominantly transport route to minimize exposure for the staff. Okay, patients and visitors, and have the patient use the medical mask. Ensure that healthcare worker who are transporting the patient perform hand hygiene and wear appropriate PPE. Notify the area receiving the patient of any necessary precautions as early as possible before the patient arrival. For example, you are shifting a patient from casualty to ICU, casualty to ward, or from the ward to OT. Always there should be prior communication before shifting, so that the people over there will be aware that one patient is coming, and everything, all preparation will be made. There should not be any emergency shifting without any notification, and that should never happen from now on. Routinely clean and disinfect surface which the patient is in contact. Limit the number of healthcare workers and family members and visitors who are in contact with the suspected or confirmed COVID patient. WHO recommends that no visitor should be allowed in the isolation ward. If the presence of visitor is absolutely essential, they should be provided with appropriate PPE. Maintain a record of all persons entering the patient's room, including all staff and visitors. Airborne precautions for aerosol generating procedures that included intubation, bronchoscopy, open suction, tracheostomy, endotracheal tubes, CPR in suspected patients. Some aerosol generating procedures such as tracheostomy or non-invasive ventilation tracheostomy or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, manual ventilation before intubation and bronchoscopy have been associated with the increased risk of transmission of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Ensure that healthcare worker perform aerosol generating procedures, perform this process adequately ventilated room or a negative pressure room with at least 12 air circulation per hour and a controlled direction of airflow when using mechanical ventilation. However, we don't have a negative pressure rooms anywhere in India, so better to avoid central AC and always keep the windows opened with exhaust fans on. Use particular N95 mask or equivalent mask whenever you are doing aerosol generating procedure. When a healthcare person put an disposable particulate respirator, they must always perform the seal check. If whether the has a facial layer, that is beard, it may prevent proper respiratory fit. We have to always check whether mask is fitting tightly or not. There should not be any leak after wearing N95 mask or respiratory mask. Regular mask, there will be a leak, but after wearing N95 mask, there should not be any leak because we'll be using N95 mask only in case of high risk cases. Use eye protection, for example, use a goggles or use face shields. Wear a clean, non-sterile, long-sleeved gown and a gloves. If gowns are not fluid resistant, healthcare workers should use a waterproof apron for procedures expected to have high volumes of fluid that might penetrate the gown. When we are not having adequate prescribed gowns, we can have one waterproof gown inside where urologist will be wearing. Those gowns can be worn by everybody. Limit the number of persons present in the room to the absolute minimum required whenever you are performing any intubation, casualty, or any resuscitation. Only minimal staff should be there. Not everybody should be there nearby. Administrative controls and policies for prevention and control of transmission of COVID-19 within the healthcare setting includes, but may not be limited to, establishing suitable infection prevention control infrastructure and activities, educate the patient's caregivers, developing policies on the early recognition of acute respiratory infection potentially caused by COVID-19, ensure access to prompt laboratory testing for identification of etiological agents, preventing overcrowding, especially in emergency departments, providing dedicated waiting area for symptomatic patients, appropriately isolating hospitalized patients, ensure adequate supply of PPE, ensuring adherence to infection prevention control policies and procedures for all aspects of healthcare. Administrative measure I am not reading. Using environmental and engineering controls, ensure there is adequate ventilation in all the areas in the healthcare facilities, ensure that adequate environmental cleaning is happening. Spatial separation of at least 1 meter should be maintained between all the patients. Cleaning environmental surface with water and detergent and disinfection with 0.5% sodium hypochlorite. Manage laundry, food service utensils and medical waste. Duration of contact and droplet precaution. Standard precaution should be applied at all the times. Additional contact and droplet precaution should be continued until the patient is asymptomatic. Guidelines for COVID screening in OPDs. Consider as much distance between the patients and staff in the OPD area. At least 3 feet distance should be there in the OPD area between the staff and the patient. Any person being seen in the OPD should be asked, irrespective of the visit, about history of travel to the affected area and contact with the COVID positive case. Affected history of travel is not history of foreign travel because it's, now international travel has been stopped long back. So history of travel is, for example, whichever hotspots are there in Bangalore, we should ask them whether they have visited any sanitized zone or hotspots, whether they are coming from the high risk area. Those history we have to take. Then ask for a fever, any fever with at least 4 to 5 days, sore throat, cough, shortness of breath, change in respiratory symptoms. These questions should be asked by OPD staff whenever any patient enters the OPDs. Anyone who gives the history should be given a 3-play mask to tie the upper one first and then lower one. Then doctor should wear a 3-play mask, that is a surgical mask. Both patient and doctor should use hand sanitizer with the 7th step. Ask the patient to follow you as you are doing it. In case of any suspicion, the doctor should consult the COVID-19 team. Further procedure for escalation should be based on their advice. If it is decided to send the patient back home, this should be done with instruction from the for social isolation. The patient should be educated about the warning symptoms. Any case suspected of the COVID-19 based on the above parameters and who needs to have chest X-ray should be sent to X-ray department next to the casualty, or if we have any portable X-ray room. Then if a COVID team advises admission, then patient should be sent to directly isolation ward. The investigations and chest X-ray can be done at the bedside. Same procedure should be followed for the patient coming to any other surgeries also. Same is applicable for the relatives if they fulfill the above parameters, who will be referred to in outside hospital. If any patient's relative also have all suspected symptoms, we should suspect them also, and we should advise them to go for testing. Setting up of isolation ward, signages of isolation ward and restricted entry and the door should be there. Remove all non-essential furniture inside the ward. Confirmed COVID-19 patients should be preferably housed in the single rooms. Bed should be placed at least 1 meter distance. If multiple patients are sharing the room, isolation ward should have a separate entry and exit. Access to isolation ward should be through dedicated lift or guarded stairs. Should have a double door entry with the change room and nursing station. Ensure PPE should be available in the change room with a foot operated yellow colored waste bin to collect used PPEs. Place a puncture proof container for shops disposable inside the isolation room. Used PPE should be disposed in the yellow bags and labeled as COVID waste. Dedicated non-critical patient care equipment, for example, a stethoscope, thermometer, blood pressure cuff, sphygmometer for the patient should be kept separately. Ensure hand hygiene, hand washing facilities and hand hygiene supplies are available at the entrance of the isolation ward, sink area near the patient point of care and the room door. In air-conditioned room, no centralized AC should be used. Ensure 12 air changes should happen per hour. Filtering of exhaust air. Negative pressure room in isolation room is desirable for the patient requiring aerosolized generation procedures. If air condition is not available, negative pressure could also be created through putting 3 to 5 4 exhaust fans driving air out of the room. Where there is sufficient space, natural ventilation may be followed, such as the isolation facility should have a large windows, on the opposite walls of the room, allowing a natural unidirectional flow of the air. Isolation ward should have a separate toilet with a proper cleaning and supplies. Reusable equipment should be appropriately disinfected between patients. Ensure regular cleaning and proper disinfection of the common area of the isolation room. Area visitors should be to the isolation facility should be restricted and disallowed. For unavoidable entries, they should always wear PPE and hand hygiene. Keep a roster of all staff working in the isolation area for possible outbreak investigations and contact tracing. Doctors, nurses, and paramedics posted in the isolation facility need to be dedicated and not allowed to work in other patient care area. Designated portable X-ray should be available for them. All healthcare staff involved in the patient care should be well trained in the use of PPE. Set up a telephone or other method of communication in isolation room or area enable to patient the communication with the healthcare worker. This may reduce the number of times the worker need to don PPE to enter the room or area. Checklist for isolation room includes eye protection, that is goggles, visors, glove, reusable vinyl rubber gloves for environmental cleaning, latex single-use gloves, hair covers, particulate respirators, the N95 mask, FFP2 or equivalent mask, medical mask, that is surgical procedure mask, gowns and aprons, single-use long-sleeved fluid-resistant or reusable non-fluid resistant gowns, plastic aprons, alcohol-based hand rub, plain liquid soap for washing hands in clean water, clean single-use towels, that is better to have paper towels, sharp containers, appropriate detergent for environmental cleaning and disinfection for disinfection of surface, instruments or equipments, regularly used sodium hypochlorite solution, either 0.5% or 1%. Large plastic bags, appropriate clinical waste bags, linen bags, collection container for used equipments. Wearing and removing of PPE. This I'll be sharing a video later on, so everyone can follow how to wear PPE and how to remove the PPE. This is a transportation of the infected patient. Transportation of infection patient should be limited for a diagnostic or treatment purpose only. Before shifting any patient to isolation ward or ICU, please ensure that the patient is wearing a surgical face mask. Infected or colonized area of the patient body should be covered. For contact isolation, patient's body should be covered with a gown, sheet, or dressing to surface wounds. These patients are transferred to a standard pressure or protective environment or isolation room. Transportation. For respiratory isolation, the patient should be dressed in a mask, gown, covered in sheets. These patients are recommended to be in a negative pressure isolation. For quarantine isolation, patients may be transported in a fully enclosed transporting cell or isolator with a filter air supply and exhaust. These patients are recommended in a high-level quarantine isolation suit. Transport person should remove existing PPE, clean hands, and transport the patient on a wheelchair, bed, or trolley, applying fresh cap, 3-ply surgical face mask, gloves, and cloth gown to transport the patient. Destination unit should be contacted and notified prior to transfer of the patient. I can start with the treatment. Before going to treatment, I want to discuss about the biomedical waste management. I'll skip the treatment part now. Okay. Environmental cleaning, disinfection, and biomedical waste management. Environmental decontamination. General principles. Healthcare environment contain a diverse population of microorganisms, but only few are significant pathogens. Microbiologically contaminated surface can serve as a reservoir of potential pathogens. Contaminated surfaces are not directly associated with the transmission of infection to either staff or patient. Transfer of microorganisms from environmental surface to patient is mostly via hand contact with the surface. Hand hygiene is important to minimize the impact of this transfer. Cleaning and disinfection of environmental surface is fundamental in reducing healthcare associated infection. Cleaning and disinfection is utmost important to prevent transmission of disease from one person to one other person or from patients to the healthcare workers. COVID-19 virus can potentially survive in the environment for several hours to days. Premises and areas potentially contaminated with the virus to be cleaned before their reuse. Products containing antimicrobial agents known to be effective against coronavirus may be used. Established clinical cleaning strategies to be used. Remove the majority of bioburden and disinfect equipment and environment surface. Housekeeping surface can be divided into two groups. Those with minimal hand contact, for example, floor and ceilings. High touch surface, those with frequent hand contact. Okay, high touch housekeeping surfaces includes door knobs, bed rails, light switches, wall areas around the toilet in the patient's room, edges of the privacy curtains. These are the where we are regularly touching these areas. These are considered as high risk, high touch surface areas requiring regular disinfection. 30 people are there in the meeting now. Cleaning disinfection of medical equipments. Wear gloves when handling and transporting used patient care equipment. Before removing equipment from patient room, medical equipment must be disinfected. Non-critical medical equipments, for example, a stethoscope, blood pressure cuff, dialysis machine, equipment, knobs and controls, usually only require cleansing followed by a low to intermediate level disinfection depending on the nature of degree of contamination. In absence of manufacturer instructions regarding cleaning, disinfection of equipment, ethyl alcohol or isopropyl alcohol, that is a 60 to 90%, often used to disinfect small surfaces such as rubber stoppers of multiple dose medical vials and thermometers. Occasionally, external surface of equipments, stethoscope and ventilators can be cleaned with ethyl alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. Alcohol causes discoloration, swelling, hardening, and crackling of the rubber and certain plastic after prolonged and repeated use. Cover matters for easier disinfections. Barrier protection of a difficult to clean surface and equipment is useful, especially if these surfaces are touched frequently by a gloved hand during the delivery of patient care, likely to become contaminated with the body substance. Improvised baked paper, plastic or fluid resistance cover are suitable for the use of barrier protection. Barrier protection can be used when for the covering these monitors, especially in the OT. OT anesthesia workstation and anesthesia monitors can be covered with the complete cover, because these monitors will be regularly touching. So disinfection of is become very difficult because many times these machines will may not work after repeated disinfection. If we use excess alcohol or something, if it goes inside the knobs, they will stop working. So better to cover with the plastic covers, especially these monitors and anesthesia workstation ventilators. Remove and discard covering with gloved hands. Perform hand hygiene after ungloving. Cover the surface with clean material before the next patient encounter. This is a chart showing how to clean regularly. So stethoscope has to be cleaned with alcohol-based rub or spirit swab. Cleaning should be done with or can be detergent water and should be wiped with alcohol-based spirits swab before each patient. BP cuff and covers. Detergent, hot water process is washing. Cuff should be wiped with alcohol-based disinfectant, and regular laundry is recommended for the covers. Then thermometer should be stored. It should be can be cleaned with detergent and water, alcohol rub, or individual thermometer holders. Cleaning should be stored dry in individual holders. Clean with detergent and taped with water and wipe with alcohol rub in between patient use. Store in individual holder, inverted preferably, on thermometer for each patient. If you are using regular thermometer, if you are using a thermal scanner, that is not required. Injections and dressing trolley can be cleaned with a detergent and a water duster with disinfection of 70% alcohol. To be cleaned daily with detergent and water. After each use, should be wiped with disinfection. Especially trolleys which you are using OT, that has to be cleaned after every patient turnover. Cleaning soil bedding, towels, cloths from the patients with COVID-19 or any patient. Clean the laundry and the surface in all environments in which COVID-19 cases receive at least once a day and when a patient is discharged. Hospital disinfectants, these are 70% ethyl alcohol for small areas, reusable dedicated equipments. 70 alcohol, 70, that is a regular spirit. This is a regular spirit. We cannot use it for the large area cleaning. This can be used for small area cleaning. For the large area cleaning, we have to use the sodium hypochlorite solution, that is 0.5% to 1%. For surface disinfection. Individual staff dealing with soiled bedding, towels, cloth from the patients with COVID-19 should wear appropriate PPE, heavy duty glove, mask, eye protection, that is a goggle or face shield, long sleeved gown, apron. If a gown is not fluid resistant, we have to use a apron. Then boots or closed shoes should be wear. Who are handling soiled material, they have to compulsory wear PPE. Never carry soiled linen against body. Place soiled linen in a leak-proof bag or a bucket. Perform hand hygiene after blood or body fluid exposure and after PPE removal. Soiled linen should be placed in clearly labeled leak-proof bags or containers, carefully removing any soiled excrement or putting in covered bucket to dispose in the toilet or in the latrine. Washing machine, wash it at a 60 to 90 degree with a laundry detergent, followed by soaking 1% chlorine or approximately for 30 minutes and dry it. No machine washing. Soaked in hot water with a soap detergent in a large drum. Use a stick to stir the or avoid splashing. Empty the drum or soaked linen with 0.1% chlorine for approximately 30 minutes. Rinse with clean water and let linen dry for fully in the sunlight. This is mainly for linens. Designated specific well-trained staff for cleaning environmental surface. Cleaning personnel should wear PPE and must be trained on proper use of PPE and hand hygiene. Define the scope of cleaning to be done each day. Use a checklist to promote accountability for cleaning responsibility. Keep cleaning supplies outside the patient room. Housekeeping surfaces require regular cleaning and removal of soil and dust. PPE used during cleaning and housekeeping procedure needs to be cleaned only with soap and water or detergent disinfectant depending on the nature of the surface and the degree of contamination. Dishes and eating utensils should be used by the patient with known or suspected infection. No special precaution other than standard precautions. Wear glove when handling patient's trays, dishes, and utensils. Worker assigned to clean the spill should wear gloves and other personal protective equipments. Most of the organic matter of the spill to be removed with the absorbent material. Surface to be cleaned to remove residual organic matter. Use disinfectant sodium hypochlorite solution for 1% for small spills and 10% for the large spills. Clean and disinfect all surfaces that were in contact with the patient or may have become contaminated during patient care. Do not spray or fog occupied or unoccupied rooms with disinfectant, potentially dangerous practice that has no proven benefits. So spraying and use of fogging is not helpful. Unoccupied patients, not occupied rooms. Prevent environmental contamination, contain respiratory secretions. Ensure early recognition, prevention of transmission of respiratory virus at the initial encounter with the healthcare setting. Post visual alerts in appropriate language at the entrance to the outpatient facility, for example, emergency department, physician office, or outpatient clinics. Instruct patients and the persons who accompany them. Inform healthcare personnel of the symptoms of respiratory infection when they first register for the care and practice respiratory hygiene and cough techniques. Whenever any patient comes in, a patient and relatives, we always keep educating everybody regarding this COVID virus infection and how to prevent respiratory secretions contacting other people, or how we have to spread awareness for every patient entering the hospital at level of OPDs, at level of emergencies. Respiratory hygiene cough technique. All persons with signs and symptoms of respiratory infection, regardless of a presumed case, must follow respiratory hygiene cough technique. Cover the nose, mouth whenever coughing and sneezing. Use a tissue to contain respiratory secretions. Dispose of tissues in the nearest waste receptacle after use. Perform hand hygiene after contact with respiratory secretions and contaminated object materials. This respiratory hygiene is utmost important. These steps should be strictly we have to follow. Whenever we're using a disposable material, for example, tissue or something, it has to be disposed immediately. That should not be kept with us or keeping in the pocket or taking out somewhere else. It should be disposed immediately nearby the dustbins. Usually preferred is yellow bins. Prevent environmental contamination to contain the respiratory secretion. Ensure availability of materials for adhering to respiratory hygiene cough etiquette in waiting area for the patients and visitors. Provide tissues and non-touch receptacles, that is waste containers with foot operated lid or uncovered waste containers for used tissue disposable. That means dustbin should not be touched in our bare hands. You should always use foot operated dustbins to dispose the contaminated or infected material. Provide a conveniently located dispensary of alcohol based hand rub. That is this alcohol solution, Dettol solution, all those things should not be touched in hand. Ideally there should be a system that where we use inside the operation theater. We will not be using touching the hand directly to take that hand rub. Those kind of systems we should adopt in all the places ideally. Provide soap and disposable towels for hand washing where sinks are available. Masking and suppression of persons with symptoms of respiratory infection. During period of increased respiratory infection in the community, offer triple layer mask to a person who are coughing. Whenever you suspect a person is coughing, if they're not having mask, we should offer them a mask, because that's dangerous, because we will get infected if they are not wearing. Encourage a coughing person to sit at least 3 feet away, 1 meter away from others in common waiting area. Droplet precautions. Healthcare workers should practice droplet precaution in addition to standard precaution when examining a patient with symptoms of respiratory infection. Droplet precaution should be maintained until it is determined that they are no longer needed. That means we always we should suspect a patient is having infection or suspected to be having infection. We should always maintain our droplet precautions. This is biomedical waste management. You must be knowing. I'll still go through. Yellow bins. Yellow bins are used for animal waste. That is human or animal body parts or tissues. Soiled waste. Items contaminated with the blood or body fluids like dressing, cotton swabs, and bags contained residual blood components. Chemical waste. Chemical used in production of biological, microbiological, or biotechnology and other clinical laboratory wastes. Blood bags, laboratory cultures, stocks of a specimen of microorganisms, live or attenuated vaccines, human and animal cell cultures, discarded linen contaminated with blood or body fluid, including mask and gown. This is a gold standard yellow bag. See, in the coronavirus pandemic, always remember yellow bag. All contamination will go to the yellow bag. Any virus will contaminate material, including in this list, should always go into yellow bag. Then red bag. Red bag is a contaminated recyclable waste from disposable items like tubings, bottles, intravenous tube sets, catheters, urine bags, syringes, glove, plastic petri plates containing infection material to be pre-treated by autoclaving and discarding in the red bags. Translucent white box. This is for puncture leak and tamper proof. That is a sharps. The can what we are having everywhere. That is for that is a translucent white box which carries the sharps, needles, syringes with the fixed needles, needles from the needle tip cutter or burner, scalpel, blade, any other contaminated sharps. Blue box, it's a container with a blue colored marking. This is a puncture and a leak proof box where glasswares, broken or discarded glass, including medicine vials, ampules, except those contaminated with the cytotoxic waste, broken or discarded contaminated glass should go to blue box. This is a chart. Labeling of a biomedical bag, we should always label it. Labeling should contain day, month, year, date of generation, waste category, and waste class, which class it belongs to, waste description, sender name, that is our hospital name, then receiver name, where we are sending. This completes the waste management and biomedical waste disinfection. These are the references. These are the website and protocols from where I took all this material. I can briefly go through treatment part now. Yeah, treatment of coronavirus. It starts with investigation. Basic investigations for asymptomatic patients include regular CBC, RFT, LFT, and especially we need to do serum ferritin and LDH levels. Serum ferritin, LDH, CRP, and along with that we have to do PCR for COVID. In case of a symptomatic patient who is having upper respiratory tract infection and suspected COVID, extra investigation includes serum ferritin, LDH, D-dimers, CKMB, troponin. And for symptomatic suspected or SARI patients, we have to do both of cases. We have to do ABG, CBC, LFT, RFT, serum ferritin, D-dimers. Usually, this laboratory COVID infection, the patients will have high level of D-dimer, more than 1,000, 2,000. High level of ferritin. These two are very prominent in COVID patients. Also, they will be having raised troponin. Increase in troponin not necessarily indicates patient is having a coronary artery disease or MI. It is common that troponin is high in these cases. That's because of myocarditis, not myocardial infarctions. CT chest is again a very good diagnostic tool. We can see the early appearance of ground glass appearance to diagnose COVID infection. This is typically not typically ARDS2, not typical to ARDS feature of CT scan. There is some variation. There are specific instruction collection of swab. Then this is a ICMR specimen referral form. This is available in the internet. We can download whenever we are sending a specimen. We have to properly fill this form and send for the designated labs. This is sample collection technique. Sample collection booth is there. That's how he is taking oropharyngeal sample now. Treatment start with supportive care. If SpO2 is low, we have to start with a nasal cannula oxygen up to 4 to 6 liter. If still not oxygenating well, saturation is low, that is less than 93, we have to step up to non-rebreathing mask. And here we should avoid using CPAP and BiPAP because they generate a very high level of aerosol, so that contaminates the environment. So we have to avoid use of BiPAP. However, high frequency nasal oxygenation nasal cannula can be used. If initial fail of more conservative oxygenation, we need to intubate and step up the patient to ICU. Risk of aerosolation with a incomplete seal also will contaminate the machines for those who are COVID negative. That means we always avoid using face masks, that is CPAP mask. This chart shows how far the aerosol reaches. When we are using a positive, non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, that is NIV, aerosol generated can be reached up to 100 centimeters, 90 to 100 centimeters it travels. Nebulization, we should never do nebulization for open nebulization for this COVID positive patient because the aerosol can reach up to 80 centimeters. Simple mask will reach up to 40 centimeter. Venturi mask also up to 35 centimeter. Nasal cannulas are less than high frequency nasal oxygenation. Best is non-rebreathing mask, NRM. That is aerosol generation is very less. This is a tracheal intubation checklist. Tracheal intubation. This is a difficult airway chart. This is a splash of aerosols during intubation or during any other procedures. This is a whenever patient coughs, this many droplets falls in the person who is handling the patient. That's why wearing a face shield is utmost important to prevent these aerosols entering directly to the mucous membrane into the mouth, nasopharynx, oropharynx, or the eyelids. This is a summary of emergency endotracheal intubation. This is not required now. Mainly treatment includes mechanical ventilation. Here where low tidal volume ventilation with a driving pressure less than 15 centimeter, maintaining plateau pressure of less than 30. PEEP and FiO2 as per ARDS net protocol, and high PEEP should be considered. Prone position, even awake proning is very efficient. Your patients having respiratory distress, we can do initial awake proning, then we can escalate to clinically indicated ARDS management. This is ARDS net. These are the indication for ECMO. Medical dosing, ascorbic acid, that is a vitamin C, 1.5 gram 6th hourly hospital course. That is how many days the patient stays. We can give up to 1 week. Thiamine 200 mg BD in the hospital course. Hydroxychloroquine dosage of 400 mg BD and the day 1 followed by 200 mg for 5 to 7 days. Contraindication for this hydroxychloroquine, prolonged QTC or myasthenia gravis, porphyria, retinal pathology, epilepsy. Pregnancy is not a contraindication. Perform basic biochemistry and ECG daily. If initial QT is more than 450 milliseconds, avoid these quinolones and other drugs that prolongs the QTC. If possible, monitor QTC closely if these are needed. Azithromycin dose of 500 mg OD or 250 mg BD for 5 days. Taclizumab for dose of 40 to 8 mg or 400 mg once IV once. Corticosteroids methylprednisolone 1 mg per kg body weight for 5 days. Convalescent plasma therapy as per the National Defense Protocol, which ICMR has given permission to do start this plasma therapy from yesterday. It has been started in HCG hospital. Other agents not available in India are remdesivir and fapinovir. These are not available in India. And since D-dimer is highly elevated in these patients, these are highly thrombotic. All patients should receive heparin or low molecular heparin or some way of anticoagulation when it is not contraindicated. This is a protocol. As I told, if what to do when patient is troponin is positive. A detectable troponin does not trigger an echo or cardiology opinion. A detectable elevated troponin more than 30 and hemodynamically compromised will trigger echocardiogram or point of care ultrasound. Point of care ultrasound would have advantage of decreasing exposure. Elevated troponin, patient is fine and there is no need for cardiology consultation. Known or suspected COVID and abnormal ECG, non-ST elevation MI, asymptomatic, nothing to do. If ST elevation is there, patient needs point of care ultrasound. ST elevation and patient is unwell, then if both normal curve is patient likely go for thrombolysis or call has to be decided on cardiology basis. What to do with a real STEMI and obvious COVID, no obvious COVID? In China, they do thrombolyze and they avoid catheterization or cardiac cath. Hemodynamically unwell patient, what to do with these patients who are hemodynamically unwell with decreased cardiac output? We have to take a shock team assessment and VA ECMO, limited resource again here. We can use IBP also. Ensure, this is for all Department of Surgery and Department of Anesthesia members. Ensure detailed history regarding suggestive symptoms like fever, cough, respiratory complaints, and olfactory dysfunction. Routine preoperative testing for COVID-19 for asymptomatic patient is currently not recommended. For any surgeries, use PPE, routine 3-ply surgical mask or 3-ply face mask, face shield, cloth gown or gloves. Though drilling, use of a saw, etc., is considered as aerosol generating, the chances of respiratory transmission is very low unless this occurs in close proximity to the oropharynx or respiratory tract. Hence, the use of N95 mask is currently not recommended except for nasal or oropharyngeal laryngeal procedures which involves drilling aerosol generations during surgery. We have to cooperate in conserving the PPs to maximum extent, or else we run short or run the risk of falling short of even they are required at the most. These are extubation plans. This is how we have to extubate the patient completely. It's a different way. We have to use a mask with a viral filter before removing the tube, and that has to be tightly fixed against the face. Then tube has to be removed and the patient has to be ventilated. There should not be air leak at all after extubation. For the pregnant patient, I'll not go through this neonatal care and breastfeeding. This is a consent form for the treatment of COVID patients. We have to take consent before treating a COVID patient. Communicating the patient with suspected or confirmed COVID case, it's very, very important. Be respectful, polite, and empathetic. Be aware that a suspect and confirmed case and any visitor accompanying them may be stressed or afraid. The most important thing you can do is to listen carefully to questions and concern. Use local language and speak slowly. Gather accurate information from the patient, their name, date of birth, travel history, list of symptoms. Answer any questions and provide correct information about answer all their questions and provide correct information about the COVID. You may not have answers for few questions. A lot is still unknown about COVID-19, and it is okay to admit that. This is a discharge criteria, discharge advice, home isolation follow-up, and protocol in case of death, what to do, ICD coding. I think I'll end my presentation. We can go for discussion. You can unmute and ask any doubts. If you are having any doubts, I'll answer here. Or even you can chat. There is a chat center is there. You can type a message. I'll answer here. I've unmuted everyone now. Anybody can ask a question. We can have a discussion. Or you can type your doubt here in the chat box. Hello. No doubts. Karthik sister, Bindu sister, no doubts. Somebody should ask some doubt. I'm audible, right? Rani sister, can you hear me?
Sir.
Doubt Kelly.
Yeah, tell me, sir.
Any doubt you can ask. Vikas.
All the equipments and all available, sir, in our OT.
Yeah, PPE is now we have adequate PPE.
Okay, sir.
Hello.
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 Praveen.
I have two doubts.
Okay.
One is related to the test, like after exposure, like what is the earliest time to detect it?
Fifth day. Ideally, they advise the third day, fifth day, and 14th.
Okay. Like
Because
if
mean
suppose I expose before that,
duration for
like
mean incubation
if
period is 5.1 days. So first test should happen after 5 days.
okay, so the first 5 days the test may be negative only.
It may be negative.
Okay.
False
And it will
positive, it will not come. Usually it will be negative.
okay. And till how long it will be like positive? Like in the recovery phase also, yeah.
Yeah. See, incubation period, what WHO and CDC everybody are telling, it is up to 14 days, but it's definitely not up to 14 days. Many articles which I went through, patients are getting tested positive even after 28 days also. So there is no clear
Okay.
clarification for the incubation period. Even patients get tested positive after 20 days or for 14 days also.
Okay. So as long as he is positive, the like laboratory test is infective only. He
Yes,
can spread it.
as long as is positive, is always infective.
So almost like 20 to 30 days
28 days, up to
roughly.
28 days. Once
Okay.
he
Okay.
detected positive, up to 28 days he should
28
be quarantined. That is 14 days in the
21
hospital, 14 days at home.
28.
Okay. Okay. And one more doubt. What is the risk with actually a dead body once it's like not effective only, not infective?
No, dead bodies are not infective. Only people who are handling dead bodies should be careful. It will because there is no aerosol generation from the dead body. People who are
Okay.
handling closely, they should be wearing PPE. Otherwise, whoever attends funeral or those, it will not get transmitted.
Okay, okay. Because like nowadays, some doctor, yeah, some COVID positive deaths and all, they're isolated and they're not given their bodies to the family. Also heard.
Yeah,
So
because no, that will not happen. Government has given guidelines. Sir, the burial can be done with the minimum number 20 people can be allowed for the cremation. Cremation.
okay, okay. Thanks.
Standard protocol has to be followed. If patient is suspected positive, then compulsory people who are handling the dead body, they have to wear PPE, and other people who are attending the funeral, they should wear the masks, regular 3-ply mask, and they should maintain some distance. This is the standard protocol. In case of positive, in case of
Okay,
negative, as usual, nothing is required. In case of suspected and reports are not coming, those patients should be treated as a positive only. If some patient relatives fights
okay,
with the hospital, like they want to take the body home early and reports are pending, such cases we should consider it as a positive and maintain all PPE.
so that needs to be intimated to the government police.
Yes. All positive cases has to be intimated. Anyway, in Bangalore, no hospital is allowed to admit positive cases. All cases has to go to Victoria Hospital at presently. But in future, in cases
Okay,
increase, then they will ask private hospitals to admit the positive cases. Presently, any doubtful cases we will be sending to Victoria Hospital. No other private hospitals are admitting at present.
okay. One more doubt is once a positive patient coughs, like how long that will stay in that atmosphere aerosol?
Yeah, aerosol. That
Like there's like many rumors on that.
difficult to say how long it stays. Maybe as per this CDC, what they are telling, minimum 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. So the person immediately who arrives at the same spot will be like high chance of getting
Yes, high
infected.
chance. That's why community mask is been advised now. Everybody should wear the mask. Even there is some guidelines coming up in Europe for people who are driving car, people who are driving bicycle, people who are traveling in two-wheelers. They also need to maintain a distance when they are driving,
Okay.
because person who is driving in the front, if he coughs, that will come and spray on the person who is traveling in the back side. So there should be minimum distance maintained between the two-wheelers also. That is not come in India. But European countries, they are formulating guidelines. So it's
Okay.
always safe to wear a
Okay.
mask every time. Whenever you leave the house, it's better to wear a mask. Even regular cloth mask also effective in protecting. Better to wear a surgical mask. N95 mask is not required. N95 is required only in aerosol generating procedures. Regular mask is enough in other time.
Okay. The person have like for a positive person,
Huh.
to prevent the spread, if he wears only surgical mask, that is enough for him.
Yes, that is enough. Surgical mask, triple layer mask, or you should wear ideally two masks, not single mask.
Okay. No need of
N95 is the best,
N95 for
or
a
if
positive
there is no
patient.
N95, two surgical masks you should wear. That
Okay.
will almost reduce the transmission rate less than 5%.
Okay. 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 Thanks.
Vikas, Janani, any Anybody any doubt?
Sir, this
Ah.
viruses, how long it will be survive on the surfaces, sir? Normal surfaces.
Yeah, I have told in detail in my first video which I made that day. See, on the copper material it will stay for 3 hours, and the fiber also it will stay up to 8 hours, 8 to 12 hours. On the cupboards it will stay up to 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours. A metal like steel, on steel it will stay for 24 to 48 hours. Maximum 48 hours to 72 hours, that's all. Up to 3 days it can stay.
Hello.
Shanti.
Sir, are we going to make it mandatory for COVID before any surgeries?
Presently there is no such mandatory, but yesterday the news which has come is hospitals which are near to the hotspot or near to the contaminated zone, they have to compulsory screen everybody, not only surgery patient, even OPD patients also should be screened. That they have made mandatory. But patient like hospitals which are not in the hotspot, they don't need to screen.
Okay, and that is a normal screening test, not PCR.
PCR. Screening is always
PCR.
PCR. Yeah, antibody kit they have taken back now. Currently, government has taken back antibody kits. Jisha sister, ask doubt.
Yeah. Sir, actually, no. Once a patient is positive,
No, there's I think you are in loudspeaker. You should switch off the loudspeaker. I'm not able to hear.
Okay. Sir. So I've heard that there are reoccurrence of the COVID patients who are tested negative and sent back home. So is that true, sir?
No, if a test is false negative, first test if it's false negative, and patient is still positive, and we have sent back that patient home, so they will be still positive, and they will do second time testing, they may become positive. But patients who are treated for COVID and gone home, the reoccurrence is still, there is no evidence.
Okay, sir. And
sensitivity of PCR is only 70%. So 30% of people who are positive also, the test may show negative.
Okay, sir. And today I saw news on the Google saying that there are trials being started on humans in the UK for the vaccination of COVID, sir.
That will take 1 year.
Okay, sir. So till then, this lockdown.
No, lockdown will not continue. Lockdown will be lifted from today night. They have relaxed. From tomorrow, at least some 30% of work will start happening. So next 6 months we should be very careful, follow regular protection, disinfection protocols, wearing, using PPEs whenever required. These things should get habituated to us. Actually, our lifestyle should change from now onwards. How we were living before, we should live in different way for at least next 6 months to 1 year. Otherwise, we all will get infected.
Okay.
Sir, one more question, sir. Sir, if patient tests positive for another respiratory virus, so that exclude COVID is a cause of illness, or any other reasons? I mean, how do we differentiate, sir?
Yeah, many patients who are COVID positive will be having other virus positive. Most commonly, this RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, or H1N1. So there will be overlap of a lot of viral infections even along with the COVID. So that's why in the laboratory chart I have mentioned viral panel. Viral panel includes this PCR for COVID, includes H1N1 swab, and that includes if we are able to test in India, we are not testing RSV. In other countries, they are testing. They consider it as a viral panel. They do testing for 3-4 virus at a time. The patient may have multiple viral infections. lifting hand.
Yes, sir. Sir, what do you think about the BCG vaccination and the protection that it is giving, sir?
No, that is false.
Okay, because I was hearing some news about checking in Mumbai, in Dharavi area. Stuff. It's false news.
Yeah,
It's
that
not
is false
effective or
news
anything
only.
like
Initially, many people told India we are not getting infection because we are having BCG, we underwent BCG vaccination, but there is no evidence till date. Such things. Treatment part, I can still again I can explain actually. Treatment part, I have made intubation, extubation guidelines. Extubation guidelines are there in detail, and handling discharge protocol. Actually, I run through very fast. Anyway, I'll share this PPT. Shortly, I'll share this entire PPT. I'm still updating. This is not completely updated. I'm still adding few more. After adding few things, I'll make it PDF and circulate. It took 16 hours for me. I was sitting in front of computer for 16 hours to prepare this PPT. Almost 2 days, 2.5 days. If nothing, I will conclude. We'll conclude the presentation then. Bye everyone. We'll see next time. If any topics comes, we'll start
Okay,
again.
sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye.